Oh my God. Oh! That's some good coffee, God. Hello everybody. Today we're gonna make a delicious cup of coffee. Welcome to the channel. This is not the Martha Stewart show, so you're not gonna get any of that happy-go-lucky fake I'm gonna show you exactly how to make the best cup of coffee you've ever had in your life, period. End of story. Using the Aeropress. I absolutely adore the Aeropress. It's really unlike any other coffee maker on the market. There's different ways to make coffee. Mocha pots, you have siphons, vacuum coffee makers, you have, traditional like pour over, automatic brewers. For me, the Aeropress is the perfect kind of crossover fusion of pour over drip coffee with, let's say, like a Hario V60 and a French press, right? With a French press, you're fully immersing the coffee in the water. You're getting a really bold cup of coffee with a lot of flavor, a lot of body, a lot of depth. And with pour over, that's gonna be a little bit more crisp, a little bit more clean. I love the Aeropress because you get all of that flavor and depth that you would get with French press brewing minus any of the sludge. So when you make a French press coffee, you get that little bit of grit at the bottom. That's not an issue with the Aeropress at all. My problem with pour over is you don't get all that depth. It's a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter. I like a really robust, deep, rich cup of coffee. And that's why I think the Aeropress, it's that perfect fusion. You get the best of both worlds in one brewing device. By the way, I'm not gonna go super in depth on coffee to water ratios or grind sizes or water temperature. I'm gonna give you guys the basics, but if you look down in the description of this video, there is a whole mess of information that should kind of get you started. Disclaimer, I'm not a coffee expert by any means. After an ungodly amount of tinkering and testing and making thousands of cups of coffee with the Aeropress, I feel like I've gotten it down almost to a science to where I know how to make and replicate what I think is damn near the perfect cup of coffee. What are you gonna need to make the greatest cup of coffee? You're obviously gonna need an Aeropress, as stated. Aside from the Aeropress normally comes with this little attachment at the bottom. I don't know where it is. Don't get me wrong, the original Aeropress makes a great cup of coffee, but what I would highly recommend is you pick up this $25 attachment for the Aeropress. This is called the Fellow Prismo. It's made by Fellow. So with the traditional Aeropress setup, you would have something that looks similar to this black piece of plastic that attaches to the bottom of your Aeropress. There's a bunch of holes in it, and what you would do is you would take a paper filter, you would place it within this little attachment and then screw it on to your Aeropress. The problem with the original attachment on the Aeropress is that as you're brewing your coffee, the coffee is gonna seep through that paper. So you're not really gonna get true full immersion because the coffee's gonna be dripping, 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 dripping down through that paper filter. With the Prismo, that's not an issue. So what a lot of people do to avoid that coffee dripping through is they'll do an inverted method where they'll flip their Aeropress upside down and they'll brew their coffee like that. The issue with that is sometimes you'll go to pick this up and that'll pop out and then you have coffee and water, a giant fucking mess everywhere. Not fun. So, point being, do yourself a favor. If you don't already have an Aeropress, get an Aeropress. 2, if you have an Aeropress and you don't have the Fellow Prismo attachment, you need to get one. It's gonna make your life easier. It's gonna make a better tasting cup of coffee, in my opinion. And it allows you to take full advantage of the Aeropress. The Fellow Prismo, it actually comes in 2 pieces, right? There's this little bottom piece, it comes with this metal filter that goes right inside of the plastic piece. The Fellow Prismo was actually originally designed to kind of mimic espresso without having to utilize an espresso maker. I mean, it's not like making a true espresso. You're gonna get a little bit of crema, but that's gonna dissipate within seconds, maybe a minute. That crema is gonna be gone. Personally, I don't really use it for making espresso, faux espresso type coffee. What I do use it for is just making regular coffee. And what I like to do is take this little metal filter, pop it in there, and some people will just brew like that. But what I like to do is take a paper filter and use that in conjunction with the metal filter right there. Then I screw it into the bottom of the Aeropress. All right, so what else are you gonna need? You're gonna need a grinder, obviously, to grind your coffee. Gotta have fresh ground coffee. That's the only way to go, in my opinion. Don't be buying pre-ground coffee. It's gross. Don't do it. You're also gonna need something to boil some water. Another Fellow product. Isn't this gorgeous? Look at this electric kettle. Isn't she pretty? This little regulated electric kettle will allow you to set the temperature, and it will actually hold that temperature. So once it gets up to, let's say 200 degrees, it'll sit and stay at 200 degrees. You're also going to need a scale. Super, super important. Please, if you're serious about making really good coffee, which I'm assuming you are because you won't be watching this video, do yourself a favor, go to Amazon, get this little $12 scale, search digital scale on Amazon, get yourself one of these. Scale is so important, right? Because you figure out your perfect ratio of coffee to water. Let's say 20 grams of coffee to 400 grams of water. This scale is gonna help you recreate that perfect cup of coffee time and time again. The other thing is having a really good grinder. This is the Baratza Encore. It's, I think, $120. It's 10 times better than buying pre-ground coffee or skimping and spending $30 on a subpar coffee grinder that's not going to give you a consistent grind size. That's why I really like the Baratza Encore. It gives you pretty good results when it comes to the consistency of your grind. And then with something like this, going back to the Stag EKG, this electric kettle, that'll get that water up to the exact precise temperature of whatever you set it at. Meaning that with all these tools, you can literally figure out exactly what you like when it comes to water temperature, when it comes to grind size, when it comes to your coffee to water ratio, and you can replicate it every single time. These tools will help you make that perfect cup of coffee time and time and time again. There's no guessing, there's no, using 2 tablespoons of ground coffee to a random amount of water. If you really wanna make really, really good coffee, you really wanna dial in all these variables. Oh, almost forgot, you're probably gonna need coffee. That would be important, almost forgot that one. So right here I got some Ethiopian coffee, traditionally very fruity, a lot of berry notes, very acidic, bright, my type of coffee. I'm not super into Latin American, South American coffees, so they're a little bit more desserty, a little bit more chocolatey. Ethiopian coffee in particular is just, it's my favorite. Whenever I roast a new coffee or go buy a new coffee, I'll use what we're gonna do today, this kind of general guideline on how to brew with this setup using the Aeropress and the Fellow Prismo attachment with the paper filter inside. And then what I'll do is, once I get to know the coffee a little bit better, I'll go back and kind of dial in these different variables depending on the coffee I'm using, because every coffee is different. They're grown and harvested at different altitudes. They're grown in different parts of the world. They all have different characteristics depending on how they were roasted, whether they were roasted light, they were roasted medium, or they were roasted dark. They're gonna wanna be brewed differently. So with something like an Ethiopian coffee that was roasted quite light, the flavors in that coffee are gonna take a little bit longer to extract, right? Meaning we're gonna brew a little bit longer. We're gonna have that coffee making contact with that water for a longer period of time. Whereas with a dark roast coffee, typically you're gonna brew a little bit shorter because those flavors are gonna extract more quickly with a darker roast. One quick thing, there's something called the golden ratio. And the golden ratio of coffee to water is 1:18. That's whatever the they're called, the coffee guild, determined to be the perfect ratio of coffee to water. But that's not for everybody. That 1:18 ratio may not be for everyone. Me personally, I like a 1:13 ratio. So today, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna brew 23 grams of coffee to 299, we'll just round it off to 300 grams of water. That's personally what I found I like. I like a more intense, more rich cup of coffee, so I use more coffee than most people will use. After you add 23 grams of ground coffee to the Aeropress, it's only going to be able to hold 275 grams of water before it starts to tip over the sides. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grind 23 grams of coffee, we're gonna add it to our Aeropress, add 275 grams of water to the Aeropress, let it brew for a few minutes, and then we're just gonna add 25 grams of water to the finished product after we're done brewing to kind of dilute it down a little bit, get us to 300 grams total of liquid. So you end up with a 1:13 ratio. That's what I like. So it's important that we bloom our coffee. Before we actually start the full-on brewing process, we're gonna wanna bloom the coffee because there is CO2 trapped in coffee. After it's roasted, it takes typically like 12 to 14 days for all of that CO2 to escape from the coffee. And in high concentrations, i.e. a really, really fresh roasted coffee, there's gonna be more CO2 in there. So that can actually impart somewhat of a sour, off, not good tasting flavor to our coffee. So that's why it's important to bloom the coffee, meaning we just add some hot water, just a little bit, just enough to coat the grounds so that the CO2 can escape and we don't have any of that nasty CO2 taste in our final cup. So always bloom your coffee, whether you're doing pour over or Aeropress, for around 30 seconds. Enough blabbering. Let's make the greatest cup of coffee, shall we? First thing you gotta do, boil your water. With water temperatures, honestly, it's really hard for me to really go pick apart the difference between a coffee that was brewed using 185-degree water and a coffee that was brewed with 205-degree water. But what I will say is that hotter water will make the coffee, the flavor in the coffees, extract more quickly, and a cooler water, the opposite. Personally, I use 205 degrees Fahrenheit with this method. And in the meantime, let's grind our coffee. Like I said, we're gonna do 23 grams of coffee, so let's weigh that out. 23 grams. On the dot. For reference, using the Baratza Encore, I typically go on coarser side of things, 22 to 24 ticks. So let's just call it 23. We'll do 23 ticks. Coffee goes in. So it's not quite medium, it's not a fine grind for sure. It's something closer to a French press grind, I would say, but not quite as coarse. Somewhere in the middle between what you would use for pour over V60 brewing with a Hario and French press. So like I said, you're gonna take your Aeropress, you're gonna take your Fellow Prismo attachment. You gotta get this, I'm dead serious. As they say, it gives your Aeropress superpowers, and it does. You're gonna put your paper filter in, screw that up, nice and tight. Make sure it's tight, seriously. We're gonna put our coffee in. Easy peasy. All right, the bloom, 30 seconds. Typically with your bloom, you're gonna do double whatever your coffee is. So we have 23 grams of coffee in here, meaning we're gonna bloom with 50 grams of water. We'll just round up. Scale, tare it. So we're at 0 on the scale. There's a little timer. We're gonna add our water, our 205-degree Fahrenheit water, 50 grams of it. We're gonna start our timer, allow that CO2 to escape for 30 seconds. After that 30 seconds is finished, we're gonna add the remaining 225 grams of water, and we're gonna let the coffee brew for 2 minutes. We're gonna then press the coffee for about 30 seconds. So our total brew time is gonna be 3 minutes. And for me, I've tried 2 minutes, I've tried 2.5, I've tried 1 minute brews, I've tried 4-minute brews. For me, I like 3 minutes, no matter the coffee I'm using. But again, you can go back and you can brew for longer, you can brew for a shorter period of time, and you're gonna get a different tasting cup of coffee, depending on the coffee you're using. All right, our water is at 205. Let's start the bloom. Start our timer. There we go. So we got 50 grams of water inside of the Aeropress. Give it a little swirl. We're coming up on 30 seconds. So right now, you can literally see it happening. The CO2 is escaping from the coffee. We're at 30 seconds. We're just gonna add the rest of the water. Get it close to the top. We're gonna be at 275 grams. Bam. Almost on the dot. And then what I like to do, take a spoon, give everything a little swirl, make sure all the coffee is making contact with the water. We're almost done. This is literally, could not be simpler. We're gonna let the coffee and the water brew together for 2 minutes. So once we're at 2.5 minutes on our little timer, we're gonna press down the coffee. That's why it's called an Aeropress. Press it. We're at 2.5 minutes. I'm gonna start to press this down and aim to be finished with all the water having gone through by 3 minutes. Take this cup, put it on your scale, tare it. So we're back at 0, and just add 25 grams of water, of hot water, to your freshly brewed coffee. We can stop our timer. Quick little thing, give it a little swirl. If you have the water sitting on the top, you want everything to commingle together. That freshly brewed coffee with the hot water. So why did I add the 25 grams of water? You don't have to. It just kind of dilutes it a little bit, brings everything down a little bit. Otherwise, it's a very, very intense cup of coffee, not in a bad way, but just that little bit of water for me, I think that it brings everything flavor-wise to like the perfect spot. That's literally it. The greatest cup of coffee known to man and woman. To the world, to Mother Nature, to Earth, right here with the Aeropress, with the Fellow Prismo. It's way too hot to drink right now. I'm gonna burn my mouth. Yeah, it was too hot. Don't drink your coffee too hot. People do that all the time. Let it cool down a little bit. You'll taste it better, trust me. So that's literally it. Full recap and recipe is below in the description of the video. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to help. I'm not an Aeropress expert. I'm not a coffee expert, but I think I know how to make a pretty good cup of coffee. And for me, 23 grams of coffee to 300 grams of water in the final cup is really just, it's perfect. I think 3 minutes brew time is a great starting point. Again, that can be adjusted. Your grind sizes can be adjusted, whether it's on the coarser or the finer size, your water temperatures can be adjusted to really dial in that perfect cup of coffee. But I think that this is a perfect starting point. If you wanna go in and tweak, you can, you don't have to. I mean, just following this recipe produces a gorgeous cup. I don't think it does. It produces a gorgeous, delicious, tasty cup of coffee. You should definitely pick up an Aeropress if you don't have one. Pick up a Fellow Prismo. I'm not bashing any of the other coffee makers on the market. I love my Hario V60, but I think there's just something special about the Aeropress. The depth of flavor, it really is the perfect marriage between brewing with a French press and doing pour over coffee. It's like right in the middle, in that perfect sweet spot. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more coffee videos, let me know in the comments. I could do a Hario V60 brewing method, maybe a coffee roasting tutorial guide of sorts, who knows. There's a little button right down there, right where I'm pointing, right there. It says subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button while you're at it too, or hit the dislike button. Maybe you didn't like the video. That would be pretty uncool of you to do, but I don't have anything else to say. Make this. Oh my God. Oh, that's some good coffee, God. Oh, it's so good. Oh, I need it. I need more of it.